Hi, I'm Laurie and welcome to The Patient is Always Right. This is where myself and Derek, Ignite's CEO and founder, have unfiltered real talk with guests from the aesthetics, medical, dental and wellness industries. No fluff, just the truth about building a business, facing challenges and working with patients in a fast-moving, ever-changing industry. We're bringing you the highs, the lows and everything in between. If you want honest conversations and real stories behind the success, you're in the right place.
I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Barry Oulton to The Patient is Always Right as our first guest. Dr. Barry has a phenomenal story about how he started as a dentist, but through a series of life events, became a master in communication and NLP, and now trains other dentists and other clinicians to achieve the career success and personal success that they desire. Barry's a big personality, he's got a great sense of humour, and he's kindly agreed to share his story with us today.
And of course, we'll be taking Barry to the confessional to ask his worst, funniest, and most outrageous patient stories, so we can't wait to hear what he's got in store for us.
So without further ado, let's dive straight in.
Are you going to get him, or should I?
Well, you're closer to the door.
Fine.
Barry, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show, The Patient is Always Right.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, look, we're going to get into your journey.
Yep.
We're going to get into your backstory, a bit of your childhood, and really, what you do and how you change lives. Before that, I want to kick off with a quick rapid fire round, just to make sure we're all warm and the brain is firing in all cylinders. So please, no NLP tricks or anything like that, just pure instinct. You ready?
Yes.
Right. Invisalign or traditional braces?
Invisalign.
Yeah? Really? Wow, okay. Didn't see that coming. High ticket treatments or high volume?
High ticket.
Okay, that's an easy one. Now, in terms of the broader healthcare system, a means tested NHS system or fully privatized?
Means tested.
Interesting. Very good. Running a clinic or coaching dentists?
Coaching dentists.
Wow. Okay. Speaking on stage or being in surgery, I guess you've kind of answered that already.
Speaking on stage.
Right. 10x your income or 10x your free time?
Oh.
And they're mutually exclusive.
Ooh. 10x my income right now.
Okay. Fair enough. So it changes with the seasons, potentially.
Yeah, once I've 10x the income, it'll be down to free time.
Fine. All right, cool. Best way to de-stress, gym or a drink?
Gym, I don't drink.
Good. Okay. That makes both of us, actually. And finally, what's more important? Clinical expertise that a clinician delivers or the patient journey?
Patient journey, 100%, every time.
Really interesting. You know what? I made a comment about that on Facebook. I put that on our on our Instagram once, and I got torn to bits by people who were saying that's the most dangerous statement you could make. So that's really, really interesting because I agree with you because I think the patient journey is the vehicle through which you deliver the clinical expertise.
Yeah, I have an inflammatory way of expressing it, which is nobody cares about your dentistry. Dramatic pause.
Yeah.
So long as it's good enough.
Yeah.
So my take on it is that it has to be good enough, right? It's got to be good quality. That goes without saying.
That's a basic expectation from patients, surely. That you go to the dentist to get
it's
something.
just assumed.
No, sure, yeah.
And it should be assumed, right? So I think if we were to grade things where good enough, good quality is 7 out of 10,
Yeah.
I think patients deserve and need it to be at least 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
But they don't really care if it's 8 or 9, so long as it's not at the cost of the patient journey. They care how the dentistry is done, how it's delivered, how they're looked after, the patient journey, more than they do whether it's a 7, 8 or a 9, because it's very difficult for a patient to judge the quality. Nobody has ever thanked me for a tertiary fissure in a lower left 6 composite.
Yeah.
No one's ever said, oh, I love the way you've used 4 different colours on the staining of that. They basically go, I didn't feel a thing.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah. Thanks for looking after me. They care about the journey. And so we care about our dentistry being 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10.
And actually, I think dentists, if I may interrupt, hold themselves to an extremely high standard in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. I just would love dentists to be aiming for 8, 9, 10 out of 10 for the clinical dentistry, not at the cost of the patient journey. Because once you've got the patient journey 8, 9, 10 out of 10, it allows you to be doing more of the dentistry that you want because you become extremely popular and you become the go-to person for that kind of dentistry.
And is that true for all healthcare, in your opinion, insofar that
Yeah.
I can see it makes sense if you've paid for a treatment. If it's an elective procedure, you'd be a bit pissed off if it was a crappy patient journey.
I think it holds fast for anything, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you are an aesthetician, whether you are a GP, whether you're a dentist, anything that is patient interacting. It's the quality of the journey that really makes the difference. And even if you were thinking, oh, well, this is gratis because it's on the NHS, each and every patient has the potential to desire to have once-based dentistry at some point. And if you have given them a great experience and the care and the love and the respect, then they are much more likely to want to do that with you than somebody else.
Yeah, and we definitely agree on that point. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've spoken about some good stuff already, so from dentistry to mindset. As I mentioned earlier, Laurie is going to do our patient confessional with you later, so we're going to dim the lights, which will be cool.
Sounds interesting.
But let's start with something light. I mean, you've been on various shows. You're quite a big personality. You are fairly visible in the dental world, which is cool. What's something that people don't know about you?
God, I'll tell you. So to get me through university, I became an aerobics instructor.
Okay, yeah.
Which turned into becoming a presenter. And I had the choice just at qualification of whether I went down the presenting, the fitness presentation as opposed to dentistry. And that was actually a sit-down, conscious conversation, particularly with my dad about, what do I do here? Opportunities to present internationally on TV, all of these things, because I was really good at it. And I was presenting to presenters. And that was all about ego. And so I absolutely made the right choice. And interestingly, now I'm presenting. That was not the plan in dentistry ever. And I get the same buzz from helping people, because it's just very symbiotic for me personally to get the buzz from helping people and see people begin to transform their lives and their businesses. So yeah, I was an aerobics instructor.
I did not see that coming. Fair enough. Okay, well, that's good. Look, I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey. You grew up in the Wirral.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned before that your dad, he sort of played quite a big role in shaping your future.
Yeah.
In particular, I think he sort of steered you towards highly esteemed professions. Like medicine, dentistry, etc.
I only knew that there were 5 options for me. Medicine, dentistry. I could have been a vet, a lawyer, or an accountant. Actually, there was a 6th because he had a mate who was an airline pilot and had a big house.
Okay, fine.
And my dad's tough background and upbringing, I think, was very much driven by, I think success at the time really was linked to what you could accumulate and maybe people's external view of you. So we were driven to choose and be part of a profession. I think at the age of 8, I knew what the definition of a profession was.
Okay.
And so we were groomed in a good way, and I'm sure it had its downsides as well as its upsides, but we were groomed that that's the direction we would be taking.
Yeah. So aerobics instructor was a potential hard pivot from that, basically.
Very much so. Yeah, very, very much so.
Fair enough. So so you've obviously ended up in dentistry. I think you've said previously you wanted to be a pediatric doctor.
I did.
You pivoted. You chose dentistry in favor of work-life balance.
Yeah. Also,
partially.
I think I was classed as it's recent actually that my incredible son Chester has really helped me to understand myself and my ADHD. I mean, it's a buzzword at the moment, or a buzz acronym at the moment, and it's helped me to understand myself and my struggles, but also some of my superpowers over the years is that I was labelled as a slow learner, a slow developer. The school wouldn't back me in doing medicine. My dad had my back and was like, he really wants to do this, you need to back him. And actually what happened is I had a car crash 2 days before my A-levels and ended up in hospital on a neck brace whilst my dad was away.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't do particularly well in my A-levels. I probably wasn't going to do particularly well, but it gave me a very solid excuse as to why I didn't do particularly well. I'm sure it knocked me for 6, for sure. But then that gave me the opportunity to really think about, do I want to do medicine? And it really did kind of make sense to me that when I looked at dentists, they had a much better life-work balance. You don't often see a dentist, on call at 2 a.m. Not often.
No.
You don't often see a dentist working, 18 hours. And you don't often see a dentist having to move locations because that's where the next rung on the ladder is.
Yeah.
And the people that we knew who were dentists seemingly had good family lives. They had good life-work balance. And I was always an artist. I wasn't allowed to do art. I wanted to do art as O-level, GCSE. It was in my family, it was considered to be a good hobby, and was kind of looked down upon. The arts were not promoted in my family. And that was evident when my eldest daughter went down the art route. It was kind of somewhat frowned upon by the rest of the family. Oh, it's, doing art. But she is an incredible artist. And I think my art ultimately shone through because I hand carve smiles. So my science-based learning has allowed me to then flourish with my art and to teach smile design and to teach, golden proportions and everything that kind of naturally came to me when I was doing my art. And I'm very proud of my daughter who has followed her artistic flair and is in that arena because I guess she's got parents that back her in what she wants to do, not what parents think that maybe she should be doing. Because I think she should be doing what she wants to do.
Do you think you partially also went into dentistry? You've obviously mentioned work-life balance. Actually, you said life-work balance, which I wondered if that was an ADHD thing or whether that's deliberate. And you said it again, and I think that's deliberate, which is really interesting.
It's deliberate. It's deliberate because when I'm coaching people, I want them to focus on it being life-work balance.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, dentistry is my profession and it's my job. And it really is there ultimately to fund my life. And my life happens to be my wife, my children, and everything that comes with that. And I work to live. I don't live to work.
Yeah.
And I think for many years, I lived to work. And I think, that partially will have influenced and resulted in my divorce from my first wife. Because my role, my identity was very much wrapped up in being the provider.
Yeah.
And that was very much still probably wrapped up in that childhood model of success. Whereas now, we're driving a 1 Series BM with a crack in the windscreen.
Doesn't matter.
Don't give them monkeys, right?
Yeah.
It's about, providing for the boys and making sure that they're happy and the girls as well.
Yeah.
And being with my wife and being with the kids. So, it's taken a long time to come through that. But for me, it is on purpose life-work balance.
That's great. No, I really like that. I'm gonna take that away. You mentioned art quite a lot and your passion for art. I mean, in that sense, I think dentistry is a great vehicle for exercising that passion. I think clinically, there's probably only a handful of clinical professions that allow you to do that. I think, aesthetics is an obvious one, where you can help craft people's faces and, design and so forth. If you hadn't gone into dentistry and if you had pursued your career in medicine, do you think you'd be as fulfilled as you are now?
Ultimately, yes, because I would have found that pathway. Because I love dentistry, and yet I am moving out of clinical dentistry to do the coaching. So I think my journey has organically grown, and so I would have found. I think people find their way. Ultimately, if you get out your own way, you can find your way.
Yeah, sure.
So I think yes, I would have done.
You've been quite candid about some defining moments in your life. I think we've talked a little bit about your childhood. I think there's one instance in particular that you spoke about on another podcast where something happened to your dad. I think there was a wealthy businessman who, like a con artist, and he scammed your dad out of money. And I think that sort of shaped some of your early beliefs around money, success, rich people.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that shaped some of those beliefs that you held at the time, and how they then they limited you in your career and in your own success.
So I never understood that actually most of our beliefs are not our own. You know, we have these beliefs and yet we don't really know why we have them. So I had a belief that rich people are bastards and only become rich by shitting on other people. And I do actually now remember my dad saying that, but he had just been through this episode with this friend, quote unquote, who had quite blatantly shafted my dad and 2 or 3 other chaps. Not so much out of their personal money, but just really unpleasant behavior that rendered my dad and 3 other guys in a Greek jail because they had sailed this guy's new yacht across to Greece. Just really unpleasant. And so it was those experiences that my dad had, and my dad was brought up in a quite an abusive household in Liverpool, where he really, for the first probably 10, 12 years of his life, he was protecting his 4 younger siblings. And so my dad's outlook on life, I mean, I think his upbringing is what led him into being a social worker and child protection officer, heading up child protection in Liverpool. That's a hell of a job. And he wanted the best for people. And he also believed that people deserved opportunity. So he is a member of the Labour Party. He's got, a lot of great values. And I think that he instilled a lot of those great values in me and my brother. And also I picked up some limiting beliefs like rich people are bastards. And actually that selling was a really dirty word in our house.
Yeah.
We would never be salespeople.
And your brother went on to become a salesperson.
He did. And the front door got broken. And there were some very hefty arguments. And so I was kind of somewhat relieved. Phew, I'm going into dentistry. No sales for me. And so it was several years down the line, when I started learning NLP, that I then realized that I had these limiting beliefs and that they were holding me back. And it was a few years later, because that was about me, right? That was a bit selfish, and that's okay. But what I realized further down the line is that it was actually preventing patients from making their best choices.
Yeah.
And so that's what I now do with my clients, is I help them to recognize what their limiting beliefs might be that are holding their patients back from making the best choices.
Yeah.
Invariably, it comes full circle, because when you enable your patients to make their best choices, you end up making an awful lot more money, because you end up doing more of the dentistry that is wants-based on top of needs-based, which is the stuff that we all like to do. Short-term ortho, I should say aligner orthodontics, clear aligner orthodontics, bonding, whitening, veneers, all of that stuff, which is wants-based, not needs-based, starts to fall onto your lap when you are able to help your patients make their best choices and their best decisions. And that only comes when you are working on removing your own limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example so it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Rich people are bastards. They only get rich by dumping on people, means that subconsciously in my mind, not a conscious thought, but subconsciously, I will never be rich, because rich people are bastards and I'm not a bastard.
And so then you start projecting that and you start manifesting that. How does that sort of manifest in someone's life if they hold those beliefs?
Well, you manifest in thinking that if you were to go down the private route of dentistry, then you could, and this is all false, right?
Sure, yeah.
But I would avoid doing things that would ultimately make money, because that would go against. And the actual true subconscious belief is that I would lose my dad's love. That's what it really boiled down to. When I unpicked it, there's this 6-stage question that I use, 6 questions that I use to help people identify, unpick their limiting belief and get rid of it. And it's based on this Cartesian equation where you're asking a question that kind of plays with the brain. And when I did it for myself, it was like, what is the real thing? What do you fear would happen if you were to not believe the belief that you believe? Well, the fear would be that my dad would reject me. Do you believe that? Well, no, I don't actually. And therefore that rocks the basis of believing this belief. The way that I would interact with patients is I had a belief that selling was a dirty word. And so amongst that, I had beliefs that nobody would pay me £500 for a crown.
Yeah.
Nobody wants private dentistry. They only want the cheapest. They only want NHS. I had all of these limiting beliefs. So when it would come to presenting treatment options, in the back of my mind, there's a fear of being seen to be salesy. Yeah. There's a fear of rejection. Yeah. If I present the crown and they say no, then I would feel that I was being rejected. It's all very selfish, and it's all very much ego-based. So I would present the treatment that would say, Derek, you've broken that lower left 6, and a crown is the best choice, but I could fill it, and that's cheaper. And most patients go, okay, yeah, let's do that, because they know, like, and trust me. Yeah. And what I didn't realize is that the word but negates everything that comes before it. Yeah. So I was subconsciously negating the best option. The patient didn't hear me say the crown is the best choice. Yeah. And it's only a few years later when I learned this, and I started to think, oh my God, actually, I'm the problem, not the patient. But I became a self-fulfilling prophecy, because nobody's going to want this, nobody's going to want that. Look, we could do this, but I could do this, which is cheaper. And they go, okay, we'll do that. I go, see, nobody wants a crown.
Nobody wants it, yeah.
Nobody wants to spend money.
Yeah.
And this self-perpetuating belief just continued. Then I learned that the word but negates it, and I changed my language pattern. Look, Derek, you've broken that tooth and I could fill it, but what I know is the best is going to be a crown. And my patient said, okay, Barry, yeah, let's do that. And I was like, oh my God, they weren't the problem. I was the problem. And it was my limiting belief that drove the way I presented things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, you've just given me an idea for how we can improve our business when we're working with clinics, because quite often people will come to us and say, look, Derek, we've worked with so-and-so agency and it didn't work. The leads were all time wasters, bargain hunters. They didn't answer the phone or whatever. I mean, that is the most common story we hear is I've tried it and it didn't work for X, Y, and Z reasons. We try to do a lot of expectation management around that. Oh, okay, it probably didn't work because of X, Y, and Z. And we try and educate, we try and dig, we try to kind of justify those false beliefs and then try and reframe them. But quite often it will be those relationships that might not flourish because they'll end up moving forward on the assumption that a lead is a time waster. So before they even pick up the phone to someone, they're preconditioned to assume that the lead is a time waster. And so then that in itself becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. And quite often, following up with leads will land on a reception person who's busy.
And isn't trained.
And isn't trained on that. And it's probably not even part of their job spec, right? Because it's the most logical place, dump it with the reception team. And that then becomes a recipe for disaster. And ultimately, those clinics will not end up being successful with marketing.
Absolutely.
So I think actually the thing I've taken away from this is that we need to do more work on realigning expectations, resetting false beliefs.
Yeah, I think that's very wise. I think there's things that you could do as an agency that many agencies don't do, which is providing some training for the person that's answering the call. Because, if the perception is a patient is a tire kicker coming in to find out what the price is, how much is an implant? And they go, here we go. Actually, that's quite a standard question. How much is an implant?
It's a fair question.
And it's a fair question.
It's a fair question.
But the response of, it's £2,500 is not helpful.
Because you're providing a price in the absence of value.
Absolutely.
And any number in the absence of value is going to be high.
All too often, I think dentists and dental teams are basing their value on what patients want on price rather than value. And value comes from an emotional connection of what something does. So an implant is an implant, but what does an implant do? An implant could be the difference between confidence on their wedding day, the ability to smile, the ability to eat. Nobody wants a white smile. Nobody wants straight teeth. Nobody wants an implant. What they want is what they believe either of those items will either bring to them emotionally or avoid them. Yeah. So for example, white straight teeth, what will that do? It's either confidence, it's connection, relationship, love, or it's the avoidance of rejection, embarrassment, whatever. It's called a deep driver. It's relatively easy to find, but no dentist has ever been taught how to find it. And you do it by asking a couple of questions, being in rapport, finding out what's important to the patient. I future pace them further down the line and then find out what's important, find out what the deep driver is. Yeah. And they literally fall in love with the fact that somebody's actually shown some empathy and found out what's important to them. Because what most of us wanted to do is to sell you a white smile. Yeah. What I want to do is find out, why do you want a white smile? Yeah. And then I'm truly invested myself.
And how can a white smile be a vehicle to what you truly want, your core needs?
Yeah, what is it that you really want?
It's the same for business owners and dentists. I mean, dentists don't want more leads. They don't want more cases. They don't want more profit. They want to do more fulfilling work, more fulfillment in their careers. They want the admiration of their peers. They want to spend more time with their loved ones. And I think those are probably some of the real drivers. No one wants more leads. That's just a vehicle. No one wants more cases. Exactly, that's more vehicle. Right. No one wants more profit. That's just a vehicle. So no, really, really interesting. What would you say are some limiting beliefs you still hold that hold you back?
Well, I know, and the things that I have worked on, and I work on, and I will continue to work on, and I know they pop up periodically, and that is that, from my understanding of my learnings, is that all human beings, it comes down to two basic fears, two basic limiting beliefs. And everything, literally everything can filter down to these two. And it's, I'm not good enough and I won't be loved. And despite efforts and work on those, they're still there. Now, I know that I'm good enough and I know that I will be loved. I know that I am loved. But I think as human beings, I think that they're just there. Other limiting beliefs will still be, there's some limiting beliefs around struggles and finances for me. I got totally ripped off by several people. I own the responsibility that effectively I must have created that. And that's where I struggle a little bit, is that there's elements sometimes where it's do as I say, not as I do. Because the corporate I sold to ripped me off for £432,000. I didn't get the earnout.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that has put the family in a difficult situation that we're still in financially. They got rid of my business manager. They hired a hairdresser. She came in her first week, accused me of stealing. 10 days in, they sent a board member in who accused me of sexual misconduct, who accused me of stealing from patients. You make your fees up based on their cars and their houses. And I was like, I went home and just cried, because I was like, you're in the right practice? And he was like, yes. I said, where'd you get this? Oh, we know, we've got inside information. And it was just soul destroying. But they literally wiped off $250,000 off the turnover in the first year.
Oh, wow.
But I have learnt some lessons from it. It marred my taste of corporate dentistry. Still some limiting beliefs around that, finances, things like that, if I'm totally honest.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But I think the difference nowadays is that I'm aware of them, which means when I find myself maybe going down a negative rabbit hole, I'm much more equipped to pause it and recognize that that's my limiting beliefs that are taking over, and then being able to do something about it. And I think historically, I just saw it as that's how it was. Didn't realize they were limiting beliefs. They were just beliefs. Whereas now I'm more mindfully aware of where I'm taking myself so that I can do something about it.
Oh, so when those things like that happen, I mean, that's a really difficult situation. I mean, surely that rocks your confidence. Does that ever sort of cause imposter syndrome with who you are as a person and your identity and what you...
No,
like,
not
what you
imposter
teach.
syndrome. Not at all. I think, I like to see what I went through as a learning so that I can prevent my clients going through it and help steer, help give them advice so that they can make their best choices and their best decisions. And, I've spoken to numerous people who are not my clients, that contact me and say, I heard about you not having a good experience. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
It was a very unfortunate situation that they then decided that they wouldn't allow me to stay on as an associate. I've clearly upset somebody in the group. But again, it is what it is, right? There's plenty more people that I can help to influence in a positive way. There are plenty of corporates out there who are patient-centric and centered on providing an environment for the clinicians and their team to thrive. That's been good for me because, realizing that I had a bit of a bitter taste from the way that I was treated personally and professionally, and the way that my wife was treated. She ended up having a breakdown because of the bullying that was happening in our practice from the manager and so on and so forth. It was unpleasant at the time, but has delivered us lots of lessons and things that we can help other people protect themselves from.
Well, no, thanks for being so candid, because as you say, I think, that's the way that other people can learn the lesson without being taught it firsthand, basically, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
I often hear people say that dentists have big egos. Why do you think that is? And how do you stay grounded?
So I think some dentists do. I think lots of dentists I meet are quite fragile in terms of ego. I think fundamentally, I believe everybody is good. I believe, every human, even when they make bad choices and decisions, I believe everybody is good. I feel that many dental practice owners become accidental business owners, somewhat maybe ego-driven. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that you've got a big ego. It really depends on what you're doing with it. I don't know whether it's just dentistry, but I get phone calls from very, very well-known Instagram dentists who seemingly are at the top of their game, are advising everybody, are doing really well, and yet they are on the bones of their arse, and they are very down, very low, struggling financially. And it's kind of gobsmacking because it's like, what, you? Mm-hmm. Really? Mm-hmm. But then the way that they're portraying themselves is like this false success, and it's odd. You've got two young, seemingly private jetting dentists portraying themselves as uber wealthy, uber successful. I just don't feel that that's right for the profession. But maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm a little bit behind the times. But I think that ego, when it's like that, I think is damaging.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting whether to what extent that harms the profession in terms of the public perception of dentistry. Because I think, obviously you've worked across NHS and private. A lot of people assume that private dentistry is essentially a money grab. And whilst they might happily pay £250 for a 15-minute consultation with an ophthalmologist or whatever, which if you go private is kind of what you get, they would, the idea of a white filling costing 150 quid or whatever it is, so why is there such a disparity? And how do you combat that perception?
So for me personally, the way that I combated that perception was to nurture and improve my patient journey. We didn't set out to make more money. That was not the plan. I wanted the reputation of being the best dentist in Surrey, if not, ultimately, who knows, the UK. And that reputation was really about my patients. We nurtured our patient journey. We did it on purpose. The way that Chloe, my wife, her systems for treatment coordination are phenomenal. and we transformed our patient journey, and we ended up grossing just under 1.1 million with me working 3.5 days a week and a hygienist doing great quality routine dentistry. No implants, very little short-term orthodontics. And it was all down to the patient journey. We were getting 30 to 40 new patients a month, and not a single penny was spent on marketing in 18 years. Our reputation is what we built. We just happened off the back of that to then start increasing the gross turnover, because by developing our patient journey and really putting them at the center of what we did, we helped them make better choices and decisions, and they wanted more dentistry. And it was kind of like a realization of this is what it was. So how did we kind of combat that perception? By loving people, by looking after them, by listening, by taking care of them, by finding out what was important to them. And it happened, I think because of that, it happened naturally. And that really all started before there were these things called Facebook, Instagram. You know, this was over the last 18 years or so. I mean, I'm sure there's ways of making a ton of money in a short period of time when you're not focused on the product or the user of the product. But ultimately, for me in dentistry, it's about longevity and it's about long-term relationships. And I think that in order to do that, it is about word of mouth. It is about nurturing those relationships and looking after those people, because they become your best marketing force. In fact, that was the only marketing force that I had. I built my reputation in my area as the go-to guy to be looked after. And the money didn't matter, because when you're looking after people and they're coming through the door, money takes care of itself.
With marketing and the rise of sort of, you know, the Instagram first dentist, do you think that dentistry is becoming more transactional, that patient loyalty is sort of dying, and that dentistry is more of a commodity? Maybe
in certain areas. I think patient loyalty is not dying for 99% of the population. I think it is, and for as long as I live, it will be a personal service. You know, AI is going to enhance it. Robots, I mean, they had the first robot about 2 years ago place an implant.
I saw that, yeah.
But it took 23 people to operate everything, right? So I don't think we're going to be replaced. And at the end of the day, it's a personal service. I think lots of it could be transactional.
Yeah.
And I think Instagram dentistry, there could be an element of that. I think Instagram and social media is a great way of dentists being able to show the quality of their work, and a beautiful way of being able to show the emotional patient journey.
Yeah.
You know, that the ability to demonstrate the before and the after, and the delight and the confidence on a patient's face, I think is phenomenally powerful. But I don't think patient loyalty is dying. Absolutely not. I think actually it's increasing. I think we are relationship people. We want to be looked after and cared for. We need to trust people. If I took a dentist and helped them to remove their limiting beliefs and they're patient-centric, they will be able to get immense satisfaction from their job. They'll be able to look after people, do some great dentistry, earn a great income, and actually symbiotically, I think it's the perfect profession. Because with symbiosis, we're dealing, both of us are benefiting from that relationship and that transaction of whatever we're doing. But it's not dentistry, it's confidence.
Yeah.
And it's the emotional attachment to whatever they're getting. And even if that is making sure, when I ask somebody what's important to you 20 years' time, they say, oh, I don't want to lose my teeth. I'm then emotionally invested in making sure that you don't lose your teeth.
In 20 years,
and it could be as simple as, that's why I want to see you once or twice a year, and why I need you in hygiene therapy, and why we're going to look after you, protect you from parafunctioning. So, you know, the value of that financially might not be very high, but the value of that relationship is extremely high. And they might just recommend somebody who wants to have bonding or whatever else.
Sure.
So I think loyalty is absolutely key still.
The realities of running a clinic. So we've already talked a little bit about this actually, and the point you just made was kind of leads into this. So many associates or prospective practice owners, let's call them, think that owning a practice is the key to financial freedom. Now you bought a practice, it was run down, you quadrupled its turnover, you said to 1.1 million,
Yep.
you were doing 3.5 days a week with a hygienist on the side. Is practice ownership the key to financial freedom?
No. I don't believe it is nowadays. I think multiple practice ownership, potentially yes.
Yep.
You've got to have the right team. And if you're doing multiple practices, then you are effectively running a business. I mean, we're running a business anyway, but what I mean by that is you're going to do that because you want to run a business, not because you want to own a dental practice. I think nowadays, actually, financial freedom and life-work balance is easier to achieve as an associate. I recently had a conversation with an associate who phoned me up and said, look, I just wanted to say thank you. You taught me that you could be £1 million dentist. For the last 2 years, I've grossed £1 million. And I was like, that's amazing. Well done. And his work is beautiful. What are you taking home? He said, about 450. I'm just now toying with what's next. Do I own a practice? And I was like, don't you fucking dare own a practice. It's not the money. It's the life work balance. It's the HR. It's you're doing the same dentistry, but then you're responsible for 9 other people's salaries.
Yeah.
You've got all the compliance. You've got all of this responsibility. To own one practice, I would say, think twice.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it, right? And but I would think twice now. I think when I get into it again, it's with a small group of people. I don't want to do it on my own again. Small group of people where the aim of the game is I now know how to run a very successful, highly profitable, patient-centric, lovely place to work. And I'd like to do that 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 times over and help people achieve their financial dreams as associates whilst serving the community and helping them with their confidence and everything else.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, as you know, at Ignite, we run ads, we do content. The main goal is to get patients into the chair or into the clinic if we're not working with a dental clinic. One of the most foolproof ways of doing that is offering a free consultation.
Okay.
I hear you're not a fan of free consultations.
Not really, no.
Do you think they undervalue and undermine the profession?
No, absolutely not. I don't think they undermine and undervalue. I think there's ways of providing value and getting people through the door. I'm a big fan of free consultations when it doesn't include a clinician.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense.
So a free consultation with a TCO, genius. Come and have a look around the practice, brilliant, right? It's about displaying your brand. That is marketing in itself, right? But a free consultation is a little bit trickier because in dentistry, as soon as you look in somebody's mouth, you are effectively taking on a responsibility for the care of that patient to a degree, lesser or greater degree. And I think that actually you could be providing things other than free consults. Now, if you are a startup and you've started a squat, then maybe it is the way to go. So I don't think it's a carte blanche, do not do a free consultation. But I like value to be demonstrated in the quality of the consultation. So our new patient consult and what we share with our clients is next level. It's phenomenal. Every patient goes, oh my God, never had this before. And so we provide an incredibly high value consult, but it's not free.
No, sure.
But then I've been in a very fortunate position where I haven't felt the need to provide free consultations. If you are a business that is struggling or is really in need of new patients and you've tried all sorts of different things, then screw it. Do free consults. If that's going to get bums on seats and ultimately you can demonstrate your value through the quality of what you do, then why not? It wouldn't be my initial go-to first, though.
It sounds like you're more about creating a gap between the value you're delivering and the price someone's paying. And so if the price someone's paying is free, you deliver this much value. If they're paying £150, you deliver £500 worth of value.
Absolutely.
And as long as that value discrepancy is big enough, then it will be a no-brainer for the patient regardless, basically.
It's all about value, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's that initial consult that I think really pegs it out.
We would love to wrap up. I mean, actually, to wrap up, how can people work with you? So tell us a little bit about the Confident Dentist Academy, the retreats you're doing, the one-on-one coaching, because I'm sure after listening to today, people would love to know more about how they can work with.
That's very kind of you.
Barry.
So I work on a couple of different levels. So I work with practice owners, and I enroll them ultimately into what is my mastermind as a small group of like-minded individuals who want to take their practice to the next level and beyond. And it's a rolling 12-month contract. It's a sizable investment, but nobody is going to sign up for year 2 unless they've had value and a return on an investment in year 1, and everybody signs up for year 2. Most people then go on to year 3. And so I work with practices where we train their whole team. We have an online portal. I do practice visits where I go in, and it's really personal and professional. I then have an online program for dentists and hygiene therapists, which is drip-fed week by week. It's called the Linchpin, and we get phenomenal results with that. You know, it's not uncommon for associates to double their income, and that's through helping them to understand communication. It's got nothing to do with the dentistry per se until you get to week 10, 11, 12, because then we take the foundational stuff and then help them with the processes of how to make themselves more productive. So we then talk about the 20-year question, zoning their diary, how they can, really start to take the communication and implement it. Our traffic light system of treatment presentation, where we present red, amber, and green. Mm-hmm. So it's very clear to patients what they must do, what they could do, and what's nice to do, so that they get to make their best choices and decisions. So online, that is run, and then I back that up with every 2 weeks we do a live coaching call as a group, so that I can help people nuance it and tweak it and implement it. I answer their questions and help them get the most out of it. So that's really good. And then I do some one-to-one coaching now to help. It's mostly, I would say, principals that are going through big personal changes. Okay. Maybe that's divorce.
Okay, yep.
Because, sadly I've been, not sadly, but I've been there, done that, worn the T-shirt, and it's helping people to navigate that and actually let them know that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it does get better, and there are solutions. There's always a solution. Or it's dentists that are looking for their next level in their career. And in order to do their next level in their career, it's really about helping them personally. So I do a rolling 6-month coaching program. And then I've just run my first retreat. I've known for years, Derek, that what I've been doing has been a Trojan horse for personal development. The thing that made the difference in my business was my personal development. The thing that made the difference in my relationships was my personal development. And so I've not had the balls to do it, because I thought if I put out there, come and join me for personal development, people would be like, who do you think you are? But I actually decided that I had the testicular fortitude now to actually put something together. And so I put it together, I delivered it last weekend, and it was just the most wonderful thing to be part of. And so I'm going to do it again. I've got another retreat. We had 20 people. The feedback has been beautiful. And I'm running it again in October. I think it could become a thing because it's not about dentistry. And so we had partners who are non-dentists, and ultimately I think it could be for just anybody. It's amazing. So the retreat, next one's happening in October. Maximum 24 places.
All right, guys, well, sign up before it's too late.
Yeah, barryoulton.com.
That's brilliant. Before you go, we do have a gift for you. A little bit niche, not going to lie.
Don't downplay it. I've not had it yet.
It's a little bit niche. When we first met, actually, just outside in the corridor a few weeks ago, you used a term which I'd never heard before, and I was very intrigued by.
What was that?
It was a term you used to describe a dentist who's still practicing, an actively practicing dentist.
So wet-fingered. God, it is a shocking phrase.
There you go. You have a gift for you, sir. Because you have forever changed my perspective.
Oh, I'm sorry. What have you given me? This is brilliant.
There you go. It's a large, I think it's big for you, but throw it in the wash. I'm sure.
The wet-fingered dentist.
The best wet-fingered dentist in town.
Derek, thank you very much.
I'm not sure I'll ever look at your hands in the same way again. But anyway, I've learned what it means now.
I love it. I'm going to do a video and I'll post this with that on. That's a shocker. My wife is going to love me.
Barry, thanks so much for coming today. That was absolutely amazing. There's some amazing value bombs in there and some amazing lessons for people. And I'm sure the feedback will be phenomenal. Before we wrap up, we've got a special little segment called the Patient Confessional. Okay. So the Patient is Always Right is about getting the raw, unfiltered truth and the spicy stories from clinicians. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you over to my co-host, Laurie, who will take you through the confessional and get those spicy stories out of you.
Lovely. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Barry, to the confessional. So this is the part of the show where we take it down a notch, and essentially we want to ask you candid questions about your patient experience. We know that obviously patient experience is very important to you, but obviously the name of the show is The Patient is Always Right, and the real question is, and it will come at the end, is the patient always right? But we want to hear all about your experience. We want to hear your funny stories, your worst stories, your most outrageous stories. Obviously, please keep it anonymous because we don't want any lawsuits.
Oh, GDPR, all that.
Yeah, obviously change the names, change the pronouns, but give us the raw, juiciest stories you have. We're going to kick it off, and I'm going to start with what was your absolute worst patient experience?
Our worst patient experience was when a patient threatened to beat me up.
Okay. So we're going to have to hear a little bit more detail on that. Take us back.
Yeah, he lost the plot, and he was shouting at me in the surgery, threatening to punch me. And it was not because of me. It was a very odd situation. It was actually quite scary, to be honest. I think maybe he was having some kind of episode, which I hadn't clocked onto, that he was struggling in life, perhaps. But he just literally snapped and lost the plot.
And was this in front of the whole practice, or was this just between you?
No, this was in, I call them studios because I'm an artist. My wife would say a piss artist, but it was in one of my studios, so it was in the surgery. Just me, him, and my nurse. And my nurse was fearful as well. I managed to calm him down. I matched and paced him, calmed him down, but my God, he was close.
Really?
His fists were clenched.
So, off the back of that, have you got a funny patient story? Something that you look back and actually makes you laugh a bit, whether that's in hindsight or in that moment?
I've got one that was shocking.
We like shocking.
Completely took me back, and that is that I had this. He's probably about 65-year-old gentleman, and he would wait in the waiting room for exam or treatment or anything like that, and my nurse would go downstairs, and she'd say, "Hi, I'd like to take you up," and every single time he would go to the bathroom, and we thought nervous because that's quite common,
fair.
right? But it was every single time. So it became the joke between us that you go and get Mr. Such and Such, and remember, he'll probably go to the loo. There was this one time where I was going to do a filling.
Right.
And yet again, obviously he goes to the bathroom before he comes in. He came in, and I'm start to do anaesthetized, start to do the treatment. And he was always a little bit odd when he came into the surgery, just a little bit, whatever. And at one point, I'm drilling, suctioning, and he blows out of his nose, and cocaine comes flying out of his nose onto his bib. Like, we're in sleepy Surrey.
Wow.
He's 65 years old. I'm looking at my nurse. This. It's on the bib, and I'm looking at her going, And she's looking, and I'm like, hoover it. Hoover it up. So she sucked it up, and then we just carried on. And I was finishing in like disbelief. And then I thought, oh my God, for the last 7 years, this guy goes to the toilet, and we're thinking he's having a nervous wee, and he's probably not. And I thought, right, there's only one smooth surface in that bathroom. I had a blue glove.
No way.
And I thought, I've got to go. So I did this, and sure enough, I was like, oh my God, this guy is getting high to, obviously, my guess is, I can't say obviously, it's an assumption. My guess is he's nervous.
Yep.
And this is his, power powder. But it completely changed because he's somebody's granddad. He's somebody's granddad. And so that was our reference point for a while then.
Wow.
If somebody was coming up the stairs going, oh, just nip to the bathroom. We're like, is it? Is it? Or is it?
Wow.
Yeah, that was a shock. 65-year-old grandpa sticking that up.
That's a good one. I love that. I think that's maybe one of the best I've heard.
I'll give you one more.
Oh, yeah, go on, please.
Because this came up the other day, is that there is this woman who cannot talk to me. She talks to my crotch. My patient. It's like, it's just, and my nurse just takes the piss out of me every single time. It's the cock watcher, not the clock watcher. Oh, she's coming in again, and I'm like, I don't know how do I sit? I can't say something. It's just the weirdest feeling. And I said, is this what it's like
objectification
to be a woman? And this, because I'm looking, and there's no eye contact.
Oh my God.
And it's just, it gave me this unusual perspective of, this must be what it's like for some people.
Yeah.
Where, chaps are just looking down or whatever. And there was very few flicks of eye contact and no awareness that when she did and she went straight down, I was like, this is just the weird. So I was like, can you maybe give this patient to one of the female dentists? Or it was really bizarre. But it gave me a perspective of, shit, that's just...
It's not nice. It's not nice.
No. And it also made me aware of, I am an eye contact guy. I'm just, be aware that that's what that might not be what it's like, but it certainly was what it was like for me. It was awkward.
Yeah, that is awkward. I feel as well, if you are an eye contact person, you're almost like more aware that they're not looking at your eyes. I find it really awkward when people don't look me in the eyes, whether it's obviously looking somewhere else, but obviously when they're looking at your crotch, that's a completely different story because you're going to notice it even more.
It was really weird. It was really weird. Mad. My nurse loved it. She thought it was hilarious.
The burning question that everyone wants to know is the patient always right?
No.
Okay, let's talk about that. So I agree with you. I shouldn't say that, I guess, so early, but I do 100% agree with you. Tell us why you think that. Maybe you can give us an example of how the patient may think they're right. And obviously, when you're in a client-facing role, you are told you must act like the client's always right or the patient's always right. But as a specialist in your field, you've got a right to kind of push back.
I'll give you a prime example.
Please do.
Patient comes in saying, I want 8 veneers. And I think lots of dentists would end up doing 8 veneers. My aim is to find, like I said earlier on, nobody wants 8 veneers. Nobody wants white teeth. What is it that they truly want? And when you dive in and you start to ask questions, and which you can when you're in rapport, right? I can find these things out quite easily and comfortably. What the patient ended up with was short-term ortho, some enamoplasty, whitening and bonding. Preserved 99% of the tooth, reduced the cost by over 50%, because what they really wanted was confidence in a certain situation that they were projecting themselves into. And I believe that I could achieve that in a more financially beneficial and tooth beneficial way. And that's what we did. So no, they're not always right. They are not always aware of what it is that they truly want, because they think it's veneers when it's actually not. You know, nobody wants an expensive handbag. What they want is significance.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, if we can identify what it is that people want, then sometimes we can help provide that emotional need and desire in a different way.
Completely agree. I guess, and the easiest thing to do is not say no. It's actually harder to say no, but also, you mentioned it earlier, is getting them to understand the value, getting your patients to understand the value, why they want something. Because, there is always a decision that is related to usually a feeling. And some people will pay the earth to feel more confident, feel better. But I think it's easy, particularly in dental aesthetics, to just do what the patient wants, to get the money and go, essentially, and not have to deal with the pushback. So I think that's really interesting. Love it. So thank you for sharing all of your stories.
Thanks for having me.
It's been fun. I actually
agree.
Wish we could talk longer, because I'm sure there's more.
I'll be back.
Great. Love hearing the real stories behind the aesthetics, medical and dental industries? Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Patient Is Always Right for exclusive content. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to watch the full episodes on YouTube. Hit follow, subscribe, and stay tuned.